Hey everybody, thank you so much for finding us here at Press A to Talk. My name is Kurt and I'm joined by John and Ryder. Today we're going to be talking about what our favorite game genres are and the games that kind of made us fall in love with those genres in the first place. But first, I have to ask, what have you guys been playing?
Wow, that's a good question. I've been playing a crazy mix of games actually right now. On my own, I've been playing XCOM Enemy Within. I played through the second one a few years back, and now I'm getting into what I'm calling a prequel to the one I've already played,
To
even though that
clarify, you said Enemy Within. I don't know anything about
Nope.
XCOM. That's not like a misspeaking? That's like a different game,
No, originally it was XCOM Enemy Unknown,
right?
and then they released an updated version that also has their DLC included, and that's called XCOM Enemy Within. I believe it may have changed a some of the mechanics. I'm not quite sure how much it would have changed, but it also includes all the DLC missions included with the main story. So it's
Gotcha.
all mingled together, so you do it at the same time.
It's kind of like a Scholar, the first sin, Dark Souls 2. I know everything goes back to Dark Souls, but uh, as far as, it's considered at this point to be like the definitive edition of the game. You don't really, maybe when it first came out, people didn't think of it this way, but 10 years on, people consider them to be, if you're going to play XCOM, the first out of these, like the reboot of the series, you're not going to play um,
Enemy
Enemy
Unknown.
Unknown. You're going to play Enemy Within just
Okay,
because there's no real point
It's
in
more
playing
complete.
through one and then going exactly.
I gotcha.
Okay. And then so I've been playing that independently and as well as I've been playing some Minecraft with two of my friends, just casually on the PlayStation. So no mods on this one. And let's see. Now I've been playing with one of my relatives, Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt, which we
Which
talked about a little bit
Yeah, what you
already
talked
last
about
week.
is it's like a battle royale where you're playing as vampires. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. So you're in a match of, I believe the number goes up to 42 for duos anyway. That's what I've been playing. And yeah, the map slowly closes in on you, and you just have to be the last one standing. And actually, on Friday, we did our first one. We did our first one where we won, and we were very
Hey,
excited about it. So it's just sad we didn't record it. I started recording all of our ones that we did later in the weekend, just so we had, the remembrance of being able to see it again.
mm.
But needless to say, our other matches after that one weren't as good. So
Ryder, have you ever
that's
won a battle
that's gonna happen
royale?
sometime.
So I've only ever, well, I guess it depends on which battle royale we're talking
Any
about,
battle
but
royale?
the very first battle royale that I can think of, at least in like the modern context, that I guess Fortnite didn't coin it, but they kind of popularized it,
Sure.
would be the I guess Fortnite. I don't know. I'm having trouble thinking of that. I just said it, but I won a. It was a solo game of Fortnite.
Hmm.
Oh,
My
okay.
siblings were all into it, and I was at home for Christmas break or something like that. And my sister handed me a controller and was like, because I was standing there watching her and was like trash talking the entire time. And she was like, "All right, then you're so good. Here you go." And she handed me the controller, and I actually won that battle royale.
He's
And
like, see, trash.
yeah, I literally
You
I
know
handed it
not
back
what
to her. I
you've
was like,
done.
yeah,
He's
like
like, I
all my
can't even
siblings were
build
sitting there,
anything.
and yeah, I know I did. I had no clue what I was
That's the
doing.
meta now.
I
Just
was
not
just
building.
being
Yeah,
extremely patient
honestly.
and waiting for people to like peek their heads out and shooting them. And I won, and all my siblings was like, "Oh, you've never played this before," and it was fun. And since then, I like initially I was like, "I'm never playing this again" because I want to make sure that I
And then
don't
he
lose
signed up
my
for a
winning
tournament.
So you
streak.
have a
But
perfect record.
yeah, but I ended up playing with them later, like in the squads or something like that, and I've lost way more since then.
I
But
gotcha.
People turning 90s on you, right?
yeah,
Was that your first battle royale win, John?
No, I've actually
Ooh,
won a duos of Fortnite as well, and
gotcha.
I've won at least two Call of Duty Warzones. I
Okay.
know I won a
forget about
singles.
that.
I won a singles, and then I believe I won a doubles on their smaller map that I can't remember the name of, but it has a prison on an island.
Mm,
And I believe I won at least one duos on there when it first came out.
gotcha.
That map, anyway.
I have never played Fortnite or Warzone for that matter. I have won like 2 or 3 games of Fall Guys though, so
Counts.
I'm glad we're all on even playing field for this. Have you played anything else, John?
Yeah, and then I've been finishing up Elden Ring. I believe I'm at like 60 something hours in now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've finally made my way to the capital and I'm
Finishing.
doing stuff around there. I know I'm probably, after you're hearing me telling you I'm in the capital right now, you're probably thinking, yeah, he's not close to done. But based on the time to beat that I've seen online and where I'm at, I thought I might be close, but it's probably not right. So you guys are probably both past me. I can tell you where I'm at if you want.
No, I'm
Oh,
I'm
you're not
actually
past me.
I'm
I'm only
past
like
you.
35 hours in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Well, then I
I
won't
just know
mention what
from
I just did
people
then.
I've talked to, they all have over 100 hours, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, I still haven't beat all the major bosses yet." So
Yeah.
Fair,
I've
fair, fair.
I've beaten I think 4 out of the 5 like major bosses that you find out about early game. I assume there's
Hmm.
more later because games tend to do that. Um, are you still enjoying it, John? Like 60 hours in?
Absolutely, yeah. I actually, that's funny you bring that up. Over the weekend, I encountered a cheater on the
Oh,
they
really?
invaded me. Yeah, so they were fighting myself and my relative Mega Taco Killer. We were both going through the capital
My
together.
relative. It's
Yes,
Mister Taco Killer.
yes, we call him Mr. Taco Killer.
Mega is his
Yes,
father. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah,
continue.
Dr. Mr. Mega Taco Killer. All right, but he ended up getting killed by the invader, and then I was fighting the invader solo, and the invader fell into the lava at the in the volcano,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't die. They just disappeared. And then I ran back to the bonfire because I had a lot of runes on me and I didn't want to lose them. So, or I said bonfire, grace site, and I was waiting for them to show back up because I knew they would. And they finally showed back up, and they just kind of killed me really quickly. And then so we went back to where he fell into the lava, and I wanted to test it. So I said, okay, well I'm gonna jump into this and see how long I have to live when I fall down here like he did. And the game instantly kills you when you go down there. So I
Interesting.
don't know how he ran out of that lava because there was nowhere for him to run, and the game instantly kills you when you fall from where he fell. So I'm saying I actually have the recording of that. I did record it. So I'm just wondering. I didn't even know there were like that level of cheating in the game just yet. But in that video, I can clearly see that he fell in the lava but didn't die.
Yeah.
And then
I.
I
Oh, go
also
ahead.
did a solo against an invader and I won. I was so excited. They were throwing these huge spells at me and I just kind of killed them with my twin blade. It was great.
I was gonna say like, I mean, the guy probably did cheat. I don't know. I don't. I never found a place where if I touched the lava, I instantly died, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But I was able to like trudge through most of it. So I don't know. But if you tested it then instantly died, I don't know where that would have been. But
Yeah,
I don't
it
know.
was actually the fall height because it was so high up.
Okay.
So it wouldn't have been the lava that killed him or would have killed me. It was the height. It just instantly killed me. So maybe that
Maybe
isn't
he was
accounted
wearing
for
lighter
invaders.
armor. I don't know if that's a thing in this game. It is in some of the Dark Souls games, but
I
I don't know.
if so, that's interesting. I haven't heard of that.
I've
But
I've kind
maybe
of I've kind of hit a wall again with Elden Ring. Like the first 20 hours, I was like, I'm supposed to like this, so I'm gonna keep playing it. And then
right.
hours like 21 to like 55, I was like, yes, this is what I was told about. And now I'm like, okay, um,
Do you
oh
feel like
that
it's too much?
I I really don't like the dead time. Um, like we talked about in our Elden Ring discussion. Check that out in our last episode of Press A to Talk if you want to go more in depth. Because I'm not going to spend like all day on this, but it's
Right.
just I find an area. I'm like, this is awesome, and I explore the entire area. I beat like the middle boss and then like the end boss, and I get a cool item, and I'm like, sweet. And then it spits me back out, and I'm just in the open world again. I'm just like, now what? And then
Do
I
it
spend
again.
well, and then I spend 30 minutes like running around trying to figure out something productive to do, and I just am kind of tired of it. But I mean, I'm not going to give up, but I'm taking a little bit of a break.
Right. Okay.
I know I'm not nearly as far as either one of you, but using the map helps. I know that seems like maybe a goofy thing, but like if you look at the map, zoom it in, it has a lot more detail on it than I think
Mm-hmm.
you initially think. And you can see sometimes caves and stuff that you don't realize are actually, they might look like a dot or something, like a dark circle. But if you actually go to some of those places on the map, you realize like, oh, there's actually something here. And so that's kind of nice because you can use the map to kind of like force yourself into a new area. Look at where the roads go.
Mm-hmm.
The map is intentional. Which of course, again, I'm not as far as either one of you at this point.
You're
I
fine.
had to stop playing it just because of had two weddings back to back, and just busy week slash couple of weekends, and I don't want to play it unless I have a few hours
Mm-hmm.
to sit down and do it. And that's my only complaint, is that the game is too big. It's not a bad complaint to have, but you know, I was talking to my future brother-in-law, actually the last wedding I went to, two weddings ago, goodness. And he was saying that he actually likes Elden Ring because he thinks he can put just 30 minutes in and stop, because there's so many sites of lost grace, the equivalent of bonfires in this game. And I get that, because he says, I feel like that's progress every time I find a new site of lost grace. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's me moving the game, and I think there is some merit to that. But for me, coming from, he didn't really play Dark Souls. He played Dark Souls 3, but that was his first game in the series. He played it once, and that was it for him. But as someone who's played the Soulsborne games um, pretty religiously, I like to have more of
Time
a
in the
chunk of
session.
time to, yeah, exactly. I like to play for a few hours, and I like to get done and feel like, oh yeah, I did a lot. Killing that difficult boss has been giving me a lot of trouble. To me, it's not fun to just kind of bonfire hop,
Yeah.
because it just feels like you're piecemealing the game. And so, anyways, I haven't been playing too much Elden Ring, unfortunately. And so I'm kind of jumping ahead, I guess, but I've been playing Crusader Kings, my true love. Uh,
Which
Always go
one?
back
There
to
you go.
Crusader Kings
The very
2.
the very bite-sized game.
Crusader Kings 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing is, it's one of those games, once you learn it, it's in as in depth or as shallow as you want it to be.
Just quick adventure,
Um,
30 minutes in and out.
yeah, for real.
30-minute
I
adventure.
mean, I've over the course of like the past like 2 weeks or so, I've put 6 hours into it, which is okay. But if you compare that to 2 weeks of time for Elden Ring, splitting 6 hours, that's like nothing. But in Crusader Kings, I played like three different campaigns and got really far in one of them, and then was like, I'm done now. Um, but when you've also hit like that level of depth with Crusader Kings, you just kind of, that I have over 500 hours in the game,
Mm-hmm.
I can just glance at the events and know what's happening. And so I can just kind of multitask, like something pops up and I'm like, yep, click, and just keep on doing what I'm doing, moving my armies around. Or
Yes, one
um,
step closer to world domination. All right. Anyway.
exactly. And it's crazy because like I still hit events that I've never seen before over 500 hours in.
Mm-hmm.
I had one like the other day. It was really funny where like my son was like the spawn of Satan, and literally was like demon possessed as like a 3-year-old, and was killing his sisters and stuff. And eventually, I ended up becoming him, and he had absolutely amazing stats. And he was murdered by his like cousin or something like that, because he became king, and they were like, yeah, we're not having this. He lived to be like 38, and they like poisoned him with a snake or something. So
Oh wow.
Satan,
anyways,
Satan some weak sauce apparently.
do
Some
what?
said Satan is some weak sauce apparently. If some cousin's just gonna kill him.
Yeah, well, I had kind of made everyone angry with me, because like I had all these events
No.
popping up. It was like, would you like to burn them alive? Yeah, why not? That sounds kind of fun.
Why not? They're already making fun of me.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun playing as him. But like after that character died, the guy I became afterward, everyone liked
It's
him
boring.
comparatively, but his
Mm-hmm.
stats were just so like meh. And so I was like, all right, I'm done. Anyways, that's what I've been playing recently.
Nice. Um, I've been playing Elden Ring, and then I've also been playing one other game, but I want to talk about that after John. You talk about Inscryption. Um,
Absolutely.
this was one of my favorite games last year that I recommended both you guys check out because I think you'd be super into it. But I'm gonna stop talking now and let John talk about Inscryption.
So I picked it up because it was on sale, and I had seen some brief gameplay of it, of somebody sitting at a creepy looking table with a face staring at them in the darkness and flipping cards, and uh, a scale on the left. And I was like, well, this seems pretty interesting. And then I got the recommendation from Kurt, but didn't think anything about it. But see it on sale, and I was like, and then Kurt gave us a reminder. He was like, hey, just to let y'all know, this game's fun and it's on sale. I was like, oh yeah, and that's why I bought it. And then Actually finished it in a weekend because I didn't have anything better to do. I was kind of forced to stay at my own home due to quarantining. So I was like, might as well play some games, have fun. So, so yeah, going into that game, I didn't really know what to expect other than the brief little bit of card-based gameplay that I seen. I don't really play many card-based games like that, but I really got into the strategy and understanding what to do, and I was really excited about just the atmosphere of what was going on, as well as the in-depth puzzles that go along with this, and trying to figure out what in the world is actually going on. And as I kept playing the game, that never actually got cleared up.
So
It got worse before it got better. But go ahead.
so spoiler free description. Basically, Inscryption. You boot up the game, and you're in like this dark cabin, and there's a guy across the table from you. You can't see his face. You can just see his glowing eyes and his hand sitting on the table, and he's basically like a dungeon master for you. And the way he has you like traveling through different environments, encountering monsters, encountering shopkeepers, encountering like other events. And then the way you handle combat is through a card game where you're basically summoning and sacrificing animals to fight off his like onslaught of animals. And it's really interesting, and it goes some interesting places after like once you
Absolutely.
get so far into the game. There's also a little bit of like a
There's a lot of story that gets thrown at you too as you progress throughout this.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So we're both in sync. All right. So the part that really got me at the beginning, whenever you turn on the game, you're brought up to this menu that's got cards that you have to drag up, and one of the options is new game. But if you try to drag new game, there's no card there. And I was very confused. I was like, I don't remember starting this. I was like, okay, maybe I clicked it last night and didn't think about it. So I dragged up continue, and it's just like starting me with just sitting at that table, like you said, just the guy, and he's like, all right, here's your cards. And I'm just like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I didn't start this. And then I was just confused, and then I made it like I beat the first like boss that's there, and I was like, okay, well this is going good so far. I'm really liking the pacing. I really love the map art, the low poly-esque map that's there, and getting to choose your path. It's a wonderful game. And then I got to the second one, and then the second one got me, and I was like, oh, okay, well, and then the guy just shows up. He's like, all right, I'm gonna take a picture of you, and I was like, oh, I thought this was game over. And then I got to make a card of myself, and it was pretty fun. And then kept doing it again and again and again. But go ahead with what you were saying.
Oh, I was just gonna say, there's also like some elements like you can get up from the table and explore the cabin that you're in, and it's like an escape room kind of situation as well, because you're like locked in this room and it's really creepy. And you can mess with the clock and get an item or solve some puzzles with the picture frame, and you know get some new cards that are stronger than the ones you have in your deck already. And it's really interesting. And again, no spoilers, but like you finish like the first third of the game, and then the gameplay style completely changes into something different.
180s.
Without going into like what that style is, because Ryder, I still think you would enjoy this, and going into it spoiler free. What did you think about the second? Like, I think the game is pretty solidly in 3 chunks. What do you think about the last 2 chunks relative to the first chunk?
I don't. I think it's because I played the first section of the game a lot more than the other 2, but I really liked the mechanics of the first third more than the other 2.
Yeah.
I found ways to manipulate in the second one that were enough to get me by, because I was using my same tactics from the first one that I'd learned so well, and I just kind of applied what I could and then tried to manipulate to get through the second one, because I didn't like that sort of gameplay as much.
Yeah.
And then the third one, I don't think I had enough time in that area to get good at using those mechanics it was introducing. I felt like there was a very complicated process in that third section, but I managed to make it through before mastering how to do that. So luckily I didn't have to get through it.
Yeah.
But I kind of just skirted by on some of the more complicated things and just use a simple strategy comparable to my first third of the game.
I think I would agree entirely. The first section of the game is so good.
Well polished and rounded and well balanced. Yeah.
And then when you finish it though, you feel really great and you're really intrigued, like, ooh, what's gonna happen next? And it goes interesting places, but I think mechanically it's not as I'm not gonna say it's like underdeveloped, but it's not just as mechanically satisfying.
Right.
Hey, Riders, is vague enough for you?
Yeah.
You good? He's like,
Yeah, no, I have some familiarity with it. It looks interesting to me. I was looking up on Steam the game, trying to see if it's still on sale or not. I put off buying it because I was like, I have so much backlog, I don't want to do it right now.
Right.
And I'm glad it's not on sale because just
Then you
hearing
can
about it, I was like,
buying
oh
it.
yeah, I'll get it, and then
I'll
I'll
buy it.
play like 3 hours and put it on the backlog. So I do want to play it at some point, but I just have so many games that I'm such a bad, you know, beginner.
No,
I'm
I
not really good at
understand.
following through with them.
I understand. All right, John, the game and Ryder, the game that I want to talk about that I started playing is Slay the Spire. Now this is another like roguelike card game that was free on
Deck
PlayStation
builder.
Plus. Yeah, deck builder. It was either this month or last month. I think it was this month. And it's one that I've wanted to play for a while. It's been on my Switch wish list forever. And in case you didn't know, games on Switch are more expensive than games on other consoles for no apparent reason. And so it never really was that good of a sale. And I saw it on PS Plus. I was like, I'm just gonna get this and just play it now that I have it. Because I was taking a break from Elden Ring, um, and my wife's been using the Switch every night to play Skyward Sword. Anyway, so I couldn't do that anyway, which is great. I'm really glad she's enjoying that game. It's underrated, but Slay the Spire is it's really good. It's really interesting, and it's very similar to Inscryption. Ryder, I see you nodding. Have you played it before?
Yeah, I told you all about it.
Okay, great. Well, you feel free to jump in whenever. But it's like the same concept of it's not there's no like meta layer to it. There's not like a dungeon master there presenting this quest to you, but you start out on a map with different paths, and you can go down a path, and there'll be enemies and random encounters and campsites and shopkeepers and like events along the way. Like just picture the map in Inscryption. It's exactly the same concept. Um, and then the gameplay is instead of having like animals that you're summoning and sacrificing, there's still an economy because you have like energy points that you use to play cards, and then the cards are just like normal abilities. Like your character's skill set takes the form of these cards, and you start out with just kind of a standard knight card whose strong points are attacking and defending, and all your cards are like a push and pull of, hey, this card gives you 8 block, it only gives you 3 attack and it costs 2 energy, or this card gives you 10 attack but it doesn't give you any block and it costs 2 energy as well. And like kind of manipulating that system, pretty straightforward. I've unlocked the second character, and I think the second character is a lot more interesting, because just like a tabletop game that's a deck builder, your power in your deck comes from your draw power. Like just the ability to have more cards in your hands gives you more options, and the quicker you can get through your deck, like the better the chances of having something successful happen are going to be. And the second character you unlock is some kind of like witch rogue kind of character, and their whole thing is they don't have as strong of attacks, they don't have as high of like blocking damage, but they have a ton of cards that are like, if you use this card you have to discard a card. But then there's also a lot of cards where if you discard this card then you get this bonus. And so I ended up on this cycle of cards where it's like, use this card to gain 8 block. If you use this card, you have to discard a card. And then I had a card that I discard. It's like, when you discard this card, draw 3 cards. You know what I mean? And then I'd use one of those 3 cards, and it's like, use this card, discard a card, and draw 2 more cards. And I would end up like, I found out that there's a max hand limit like pretty quickly with this new character. And so instead of just having like 5 options or 6 options, however many the first character has, I'm sitting there with 10, and I'm like, okay, I actually need to be a little more strategic and use up some of my cards before I start drawing more, or else they're just going to go immediately to discard because I don't have room for them in my hand. And it's really interesting. There's a lot of like status effects that some are kind of boring, make you weaker, make you stronger, but others are like I guess this one's kind of lame, but it like prevents you from being buffed or debuffed for a certain amount of turns. There's one called Bomb where you hit someone with bomb, and then in like X amount of turns they explode and deal 40 damage to everybody. It's kind of cool stuff. And then again, Ryder, please jump in whenever. But the coolest part, in my opinion, is like the events that happen. Because again, you see like the little enemy faces on the maps, and then you also see like question marks. And I always take the path that has the most question marks. And it really is 50-50 whether it's going to hurt you or help you. Like one time there was this guy that was like, I'll sell you a mask and give you a new face. And it was like 50-50, good or bad. And I was like, I'll take those odds. How could I lose? And I lost. And the rest of my run was much harder than that. But it's just really cool things like that. And there's another one that's like, there's a banana and a donut hanging from the ceiling. Which one do you eat? And it's like, well, the donut.
A donut,
like,
obviously.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, congratulations, you just got +7 max health. And it's like, sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What is the main purpose of the game? Like, is there an overarching story as well? Is this like a roguelike?
You're to slay the spire.
Yeah, it's a roguelike.
Oh, that's it.
My understanding is the spire is just like a giant tower, or maybe it's the enemy at the end of the tower. But you start on like the first floor, fight your way up the map to defeat a boss, then you go up to the next floor and you go up and up and up. And I assume there's a top, but I've gotten to the second floor boss twice, but no further. And then when you die, it is a roguelike. There's like challenges.
Have you finished the game at all?
No.
With any of the characters? Okay.
No, like I said, I got to the second main boss with both characters, but I haven't beaten the second main boss.
Okay.
But there's like challenges where it's like, block this much damage, and then when you do, you unlock a new skill on that character that they have from the beginning, so that on subsequent playthroughs they're stronger. So it's easier to get further faster. You know what I mean? So there is like some sense of permanent progression. But I don't know how long the game is. The game could be, it could be 3 floors. It could be like 30. I genuinely have no clue how long the game is, or if there's any like save points in the middle.
It's really great how much replayability the game has. I've 100%ed the first character, and
wow.
It probably took me like 25 hours or so. I've almost 100%ed the second character as well, and there's just so much variability. Every time I've played, I've pretty much had a completely different playthrough, and you can kind of learn what works best. Mm-hmm. But it's really cool because you can kind of set up at the beginning of each run, because you start with the base. You get like, with your first character, you get 7 attacks, 3 blocks. That's it. And, the very first fight you win, maybe it gives you a choice of a new card to add to your hand. And you click, and there's 3 different cards. And so you immediately have to start planning based on what you're given. You can say, okay, well, I want the one that's going to give me extra block, and I have to discard a card. And you click that. Or you might want the one that gives you 3 damage to enemies but deals 2 weak. And it's really cool because they all kind of compound on each other. And every time I've played, pretty much in like long sessions, I've come up with this completely different combination of how the character works. And every time you think you've learned a character, there's something that comes out of left field and just completely surprises you. New combinations you've never thought of before. I'm about 40 hours in or so on the PC, and I haven't even touched the third character.
How many characters?
I've beat the game 4.
4? But you have to unlock
the 4 that I know of. Yeah, you start with the first one and then kind of work your way up from there, and they get harder to unlock. Like the ability, the way you unlock them gets harder the longer you play the game.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so many different play styles. I think that's part of the reason why, as someone who's only done 2 runs, like, I feel like I've gotten decently far. Again, I don't know how long the game is, but I think part of the trap that I'm falling into is I'll get some cards, like, okay, I see how these kind of like synergize together, and then I'll just randomly stumble upon another card. It's like, do you want this card that synergizes really well with the deck you have, or do you want this other card that does something really cool that you've never seen before? I'm like, well, I want the really cool card, obviously. And so I'm
never do it.
Yeah, I'm like splitting into like, I'm not having like a cohesive deck, and so I'll get a hand. I'm like, oh, these don't work. I can't. I'll just.
It's all intentional.
Yeah, for sure.
It rewards you for sticking, even if like your deck might not look good on paper. If it works well together, it's a better deck than a disjointed deck with one card that does 20 damage, but has this like huge drawback because it
Mhm.
doesn't, fit in with anything else. But it's a really great game. I recommend it for anyone. John, if you like the description, you should definitely play this.
Okay.
I looked it up on how long to beat because I was just,
Yeah.
I've played nearly 40 hours and I'm just kind of like, I'm done. I'll go back at some point, I'm sure, and play more. But it's over 200 hours for completionists,
Oh
and
wow.
you don't have to do that. But um, like I said, I played 40 hours, 100% of one character, and got like probably 80% the way through with another one. As far as like their level ups is what I consider percenting it.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I'm done. That's good enough for me.
Okay. I'll keep that one in mind.
Okay. Awesome. Well, now here's where I put in a really smooth segue where we talk about our main topic. All right, we're going to be talking about our favorite genres in games and the games that really made us love those genres. John, this is a topic that you came up with. So I'm going to let you start. So you said you have 4. I also have 4. Ryder, you said you came up with some. How many you got?
I got 4.
You got 4? All right, so we'll each do 4, and if this starts going long, we'll just like start spitballing real quick. But John, why don't you start with your number 4 favorite genre, and then if either of us agree, we can just like jump in and talk about it whenever he's going.
All right. So I'm supposed to pick. I'm supposed to go 4-1, right?
Yeah, if you have them ranked, and if you don't, then
Okay.
don't worry about it.
I didn't necessarily rank them, but I actually, looking at it, it probably ends up being ranked anyway.
Okay.
So first, I'm gonna just start with just story-based RPG games. I know it's a very broad category. Do you want me to give you some ideas of what I put in that category?
Yeah, because that can mean a lot, which is fine.
Yeah,
But go ahead.
That was what I could. I put all of these in this box, but they were all so different. But I see them in my head as the genre that I like to play. So I'm gonna throw everyone through a loop here, probably. But Final Fantasy IX, which is one of the first games like that I played.
Okay.
That actually got me into playing more of these type games.
Let's throw out like the subgenres. Let's get really specific as you're doing this. So
feel free to
that's a turn-based JRPG.
All right, cool. Okay, so we got that. Dungeon Siege. Have either of you?
I'm just gonna stare at you.
It's a top-down view and you have a group of warriors and soldiers. You start out with just a farmer, and then you go up and you're basically saving the kingdom of Ebb.
Is it
from the forces of darkness and destruction? Is
it like an action game, or is it like are you like overseeing like War for the Overworld?
Is this like a isometric RPG?
Yes,
like
it is.
Yeah. Okay, like old Obsidian games, original Fallout.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Something like older games like that. And then you have an inventory system you have to manage as well. And you level up the characters with like D&D stats. So you got strength, dexterity, intelligence.
Gotcha. This is isometric.
You build the characters the way you want them. Right. All right. Next is Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas.
Okay.
So first-person shooters that are RPGs. Yeah. And then Mystic Quest, which is very similar to the original Final Fantasies that are on Game Boy. You can play them on Game Boy because they remade them for that, but I don't remember the original systems are. But the Mystic Quest.
Oh yeah, that's Final Fantasy.
You run around on a map, and then you are put into a match with 3 to 4 enemy opponents, and it's turn-based combat.
Yeah,
so that's probably another JRPG.
I'm pretty sure that was
it's made by this Final Fantasy. It's called Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, I believe.
I'm pretty sure that was made by or that was one of America's first Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
And then they were like, this one is easy because the Americans don't understand thinking, and so we'll give them the easy Final Fantasy. But I've heard people say it's actually pretty good.
It is a great game.
Okay, so just narrative. So you like narrative-heavy games with RPG mechanics?
Exactly. Yeah, that's
a broad paintbrush, but it's yours, so you can claim it.
Right. Don't worry. I get into. I have another category later that I don't even know if it's a genre, but y'all are gonna have to help me name this genre. So I don't think it has a name. But that's later.
So I don't know that I'm gonna say narrative heavy RPGs specifically are one of my favorites, but are you? Are you including things like I'm gonna name some games and I'm asking if you would like include that? Okay, so like Skyrim.
All right. Yes, I would agree that fits
Okay,
there.
Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yes,
Okay, The
Judge
He
Witcher.
didn't like that
probably.
one
Yeah.
though.
The
The
I played
Witcher.
most of the remake. The Witcher, yes, Witcher 1 and 2 I played. I can for sure say it's probably the third one too, yeah.
Okay,
It's just a very
interesting.
broad category for me, but I didn't know a better way to put it. But
No,
I
I mean
felt like
I'm into it.
all of I felt like all of these games fit together in that way. That's why I kind of listed them all together.
They're mechanically like they have
They're so
RPG elements.
mechanically
They're
different, yeah.
mechanically very different, but like I see the narrative connection that you're going for.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay. So what was the
Let's start off with the easy one, right?
what was Final Fantasy IX? That's the oldest game, except for maybe Mystic Quest that you mentioned. Is that the game that got you into that genre?
Yeah, so Final Fantasy IX, I remember, so it's actually funny. I brought this up to my dad recently, and he didn't know what I was talking about, but I know he just forgot. So we used to all have a PlayStation we all played, and he was playing through a lot of the Final Fantasy games. We had, I believe, five. I actually don't know about that one, but I know seven and nine we did have
Uh huh.
on the PlayStation, and he was playing through seven a lot. And I know he had a run through of nine going because I watched him go through a swamp area and get the chef guy because I was like, oh man, this guy's cool. And I was like, I want to play this. And so I asked him one day on the weekend, I was like, hey, can I play this when you go to work? Um, he was like, yeah, you just can't make a save game. So I played that game for an undetermined amount of time. And then I finally got my characters killed on one of the boss fights
Uh huh.
and I got very mad because I sat there and played that game most of the day, and then once you game over, you have to reload a save. Well,
Yeah.
because I wasn't supposed to save, I just had to start over.
Were there not a million save slots? Didn't those little
No,
RPGs have like a bunch of save
three.
slots? Oh, there's only three.
Final
Okay.
Fantasy IX had three, and he
Okay.
didn't want me to overwrite them because he was worried I was going to overwrite his.
Fair
And then
enough.
I brought this up to him, let's say it was 2 years ago at this point, and I was like, "Hey, you remember Final Fantasy IX? And we used to have that." He's like, "Nah, I've never played that." I was like,
He's
"Yeah,
like,
you
I have
have."
no idea what you're talking about.
I said, "Yes, you have," because I have. I told him this story. He was like, "No,
Because
I
of
don't remember
trauma.
that." He was like, "No, I don't remember that," and I was like, "Yes, you did have that game." I said, "You can argue with me all day, but you had that game because you told me I couldn't save." And then I actually had played to that point in the game, and I was at least 6 hours into that game. And um, yeah, and I had to start over. But that's why I told him I was like, "You can't tell me you didn't have this game."
Ryder,
But
did
that
you
was
hear that?
this
John
was one
lost
of
to an
the
early game boss.
6 hours in
What
to
a
a Final
loser.
Fantasy game. It's crazy.
What an
And
idiot.
Hey Ryder, what's your number
and
4
then Mystic
genre?
Quest as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I totally cut you off.
That's fine. I was just gonna say Mystic Quest is one of those early games as well, playing on the Super Nintendo. But
Gotcha.
those two games
Okay,
were the
okay.
start.
Are you done interrupting me, John? Okay.
Oh yes.
All right. Enough about you, Ryder.
I'm
Ryder,
go
what's your
ahead
number
and
4
just
genre?
exit the call.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't really rank them. Maybe
That's
that's a
fine.
cop out,
You don't have to
but
Pick the third
like
one.
a lot of times it kind of depended on what part of life I was in, what I was interested in at the time, and I'm gonna go with what was at the bottom of my list, which is
Sure.
also just I wrote RPG, just
Oh,
very
hey, look at
generic.
that.
But I think I can probably be a little more specific. But again, so I don't think mechanics are all that make a video game because yeah, that's easier to like kind of classify these games by saying like, oh, it's a third person shooter RPG, with these types of mechanics and this and that. But I think that the narrative is a huge part of it. And, for me, narrative driven Western RPGs, I think, are kind of my cup of tea when it comes to RPGs. If I had to pick something more specific as like a subcategory. And so what really got me into that, if I had to pick something, would probably be Knights of the Old Republic 2. it's one of my favorite games of all time. Like to this day, I firmly believe it is one of the greatest video games ever made. It
Wow.
suffered from just being rushed through production, but it's Obsidian, an absolutely amazing game as far as the dialogue, gameplay, environments, and it did something for Star Wars that has never been done since, and that is a like actual
Good game.
and in depth analysis of the nature of the Force,
Mm-hmm.
and that just like it wrapped in like religion, philosophy, uh, politics, like all these things that as like a 10-year-old or so that I hadn't really been exposed to, and was just like, let's discuss them. And getting into things like again like the nature of the Force, like is the Force actually a good thing? Maybe it's actually a really bad thing because it has a will of its own and kind of bends us to it. And I thought that was such an interesting thing, and having like dialogue choices, so like, you know, I could react accordingly. So if someone starts like talking smack, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna be rude back. Sometimes you got the option to like force choke them. You know, if you had that ability unlocked, that was really cool for me because the RPG elements are just so well weaved into like the actual narrative structure. Because the powers that you chose in your skill tree, the abilities that you chose in your skill tree, the amount of wisdom or intelligence, charisma, whatever you had, all directly affected conversations. And so you could see parts of the world that you would never see otherwise if you had a high charisma, because you can convince someone, you know, let's do this, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, these build off of an even older Western RPG, the granddaddy of RPGs, D&D. You know, just all of those elements are right there and just were built into, you know, Knights of the Old Republic. But the core like narrative structure and like being able to kind of see this like, sprawling like story, or as insular as um Knights of the Old Republic could be at times, it just I fell in love with it. And I guess later something that really just expanded on it for me was Mass Effect, which was BioWare. Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 were BioWare, 2 was more Obsidian than BioWare. But I just kind of got to see this kind of continuation. Some of the writers and directors that were involved in those games were heavily involved in Mass Effect. You know, Mass Effect was created because they wanted to do their own thing with Knights of the Old Republic, and LucasArts was like, we're gonna rein you in a little bit. But uh, that same like heavily dense like narrative, your decisions kind of mattering so much, and again like the way you built your character, from the actual mechanical side blends into how the story plays out. And further on, a game that these two have never ever heard me talk about, I'm sure, is The Witcher 3. um
Never heard you talk about that game before.
It's an indie
I
game,
know,
right?
yeah, it's a
Okay.
small thing. But one
Based
and
on the
two,
board game.
yeah, the obscure Witcher board game.
Based on the
Um,
Netflix original.
yeah, um, starring Superman. But the I love Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 for their own reasons, but Witcher 3 is just like a league of its own. And I'm not going to beat a dead horse for you or anyone else watching this. I'm sure that everyone knows about The Witcher 3 at this point. Another game more recent that just really again gives mechanically completely different from anything else I've mentioned, but still an action RPG that's Western developed and like themed and extremely narrative focused is Kingdom Come Deliverance. It's the
Good
most
game.
realistic game out of these. Mechanically, it's just so different from anything else I've ever played. Period. But the story is absolutely amazing, and it's crazy because it's so grounded because it's actually set in Bohemia and like the Holy Roman Empire in our actual world. You go to cities that were actually, they took literal drawings, portraits from the time period to recreate the full city. So it's so accurate. You know, the tunics that they're wearing are made of like stitch cloth, the same way that like, you know, a nobleman living in the 1400s would, his clothes would look. All that just kind of gives into this like whole idea of like being completely immersed and just enveloped in this world. And I think that's what I love about action, not action, narrative driven RPGs. And the action element, I think a lot of times aids that.
Mm-hmm.
I love turn based games, but you know, this isn't a Western game, but think about like Final Fantasy VII remake. That game is more Western in a lot of ways than any of the previous Final Fantasy games. Imagine if you were playing through Final Fantasy remake and you got to a random encounter and all of this like cool 3D action like running around just stops and goes straight into like turn-based with Cloud like standing there like this, you know?
Mm.
Like I love turn-based games, but that kind of takes you out of that immersion a little bit. Um, and you know, Knights of the Old Republic 2 is turn-based, but it was also made nearly 20 years ago now, like 18 years ago. So there's some leeway there that I can give that that I can't really give modern games.
As someone who hasn't played Knights of the Old Republic, should I own it on Steam. Should I check it out or should I just wait for the remake?
I think it's an amazing game in its own right, and I think it's worth playing so that you can play 2 and have that reference level because I don't think that they're going to release a remake for 2, and
Mm.
so I think it makes sense to play 1 and 2 for the historical significance that they both have because they've been extremely influential in the creation of modern games, whether people realize it or not. Like even in an indirect way, something like Mass Effect was literally the spiritual successor to Knights of the Old Republic. So I think they're worth playing. They're really fun games, really well crafted games. And if I had to guess, uh, the new Knights of the Old Republic is probably going to be an action game. It
Yeah,
might
probably.
have some of the RPG elements, but I think they're probably going to roll back the turn based combat because you know it's just it feels dated now, and I think it's okay again playing a game that is older. It doesn't feel as jarring, but
Mm-hmm.
if you're playing a modern game and it has turn-based elements and it's you know just this absolutely beautiful 4K stunning masterpiece, and you go back to like waiting for your turn to hit someone while they're shooting at you, it's kind of goofy.
I'm going to continue the trend of RPGs, but I'm going to be a little more specific, and I'm going to say strategy RPGs are my like fourth favorite genre. And honestly, if I'm being honest with myself and with you all, when I say strategy RPGs, I mostly just
You
mean
mean
Fire
Fire
Emblem.
Emblem?
Yeah, I
I
mostly just
knew
mean
it.
Fire Emblem. Um, I played other art. I played a little Final Fantasy Tactics. I played a little Triangle Strategy, a little Warrior Groove, a little Into the Breach, but none of them have just landed with me the same way as Fire Emblem. I started Fire Emblem. I started with the series Fire Emblem with the game Fire Emblem: The Blazing Sword, which in America was the first Fire Emblem game, so they just called it Fire Emblem, even though I believe it was the seventh game in the series. John, you good?
I
John's
thought it
also a
was
Fire
called.
Emblem fan.
I thought it was called the Blazing Blade.
Well, it's
That's that's
semantics
why I
about
was. Yeah,
unofficial translations of a Japanese game. Um,
I just
yeah,
had to think about it for a second. Okay. Yeah.
and honestly, I think that Fire Emblem is and the like strategy RPG genre is responsible entirely for like my love of like D&D and board games now because that kind of translates one to one. At least the combat of D&D is very similar to the
Nice.
combat in Fire Emblem as far as just like moving around a grid if you're the kind of player that uses a grid. Um, and then just having all the different class options, meeting all the really interesting characters. John, you talk about narratives. Fire Emblem games traditionally have really good stories, and it's not just like the A plot where it's like, hey, go save the world from this magic apocalypse. It's, oh, this person lost their brother and they're alone and they're a healer. And so, what are they going to do besides hide in this village? They don't have any skills to survive because the bandits are raiding the mountainside right now. So you're like, well, come with us. We could use a healer in our army. We're trying to, stop this secret, group of villains. And then you take the healer, and then, 13 chapters later, which is like 20, 25 in game hours, you're like raiding this castle, and you find out that her brother has been hired as a mercenary by the bad guys. And like, that's just good storytelling. And then you have, then you have different options there too. You can just depending on how you've decided to pursue your party. Because one of the drawbacks potentially about Fire Emblem and strategy games is sometimes you get, and this is actually with any RPG, you get more characters than you can put in your party. Um, and so if you recruit this,
Pokemon. That's why they cut the Pokédex in the most recent entries. They knew that there are too many, and you can only
They're
have
trying
six in
to
your
help
party.
you.
So
I'm
Yeah,
just gonna I'm just gonna keep going.
cut the number in half.
I'm just gonna keep going. If you recruit the sister, and then you just never bring her into battle, never level her up, and you don't bring her into this battle, then you don't have any choice but to fight her brother and kill him. But if you do bring her and she's strong enough to hold her own, survive the onslaught of enemies, and go and talk to the brother, then she can like kind of reason with him and be like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing? I haven't seen you in years. Why are you fighting the bad guys?" And he's like, "I'm just trying to get money to survive." And then you end up recruiting that character too. And it's just like the character focused storytelling is just really good. And I find that strategy RPGs do that well because there's tend to be more characters, and so there's more relationships between the characters. And like half of your playtime in Modern Fire Emblem, like Three Houses, Awakening, Fates, even though Fates isn't very good, is half of your playtime is just making the characters talk to each other and finding out interesting things about their lives. And I love that. And then also the combat's good and the animations are beautiful. That pixel art, Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem attack animations, mwah. Like every game should just be that art style all the time because it's perfect. John, I know you're a big Fire Emblem fan. You have anything to add?
Yeah, that was my second. This is the next one I was going to bring up actually.
Okay.
My genre would be strategy, real time, and turn based. There were some the ones that really defined the genre for me. I had to put them together just because they were games that I played very close together timeline wise. So I just went ahead and just put the strategy genre in general because, like you had said, your first game was Fire Emblem 7, which in the US was just called Fire Emblem, released on the Game Boy Advance. And that was my first Fire Emblem game too. I remember buying it at a gas station because I seen it there, and I asked my mom for it, and it was like $10 or something.
What
$20.
gas station was selling video games? Where were you?
The gas station closest
It's out
to
of
my
the meth
school.
dealer's truck.
School in the middle of nowhere. Honestly, it could have been. I have no idea. But that's how I ended up playing my first Fire Emblem game. And yeah, it's just a fantastic game. And that was one of the very first turn-based strategy games that I played. And I couldn't think of any more off the top of my head. So I think that might have been the first one that I actually played that was turn-based. And that introduced me to the series as well as turn-based strategy. And I play D&D once a week now, and like I just said, I'm playing XCOM. So this is a genre that I really love. And and then for real-time strategy, one of the first real-time strategy games I ever played, you two have probably never even heard of it, but it released on the Super Nintendo. It's called Sim Ant.
Yeah.
Wait, you've heard of this game? That's hilarious.
Sim Ant. I haven't played it, but I know what you're talking about. I know things.
So, if you've never heard of this game, you are this yellow ant that you start in a colony of black ants, and your job is to infest the whole yard and the house with black ants and take over all the occupation of the red ants and fight off the red ants to take over the yard and infest the house as well as the yard with ants. And it's a very hilarious.
Just, like, hearing you talk.
Yeah, it's a very hilarious game where you can choose what kind of ant you want to be, and you help build and design the ant colonies in the first one, and then you go to these other ant colonies that are established after you send out the flying ants to make new colonies. I can't remember what the flying ants are called,
Drones.
but is it drones? I don't know.
That's what bees are called. Actually, I said that like I knew, but.
But the flying ants go out and they make new colonies in the yard, and then you can help with their occupations of areas to take them over before the red ants get there. And you just take over these scenarios to help out and fight on your fronts against the red ants. And it was on the Super Nintendo. It's just a funny and fantastic game where you can kill giant spiders. You have to watch out for the humans stepping around in the yard. You just collect food and kill caterpillars and bring food back for your colonies. It's a hilarious game. That was one of the first real-time strategy games I ever played, and that's what introduced me to this genre. And then I moved forward with StarCraft 1, and then Warcraft 3, and then the additions that came along with both of those games. And then that moves me to today where I played through, XCOM 2. Well, sorry, XCOM 2 was a turn-based strategy, but real time being, StarCraft 2, stuff like that, and just really just inspired me to really get into this genre and really makes me think whenever I get into these games. So just overall, fantastic games. That's what got me into those.
I really wasn't expecting Sim Ant to come up like ever in a conversation with anyone. Um,
Well, now you know.
have either
It
of
will.
you played Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle? It it's
I
I'm not a
own
Rabbids
it, but
fan.
I never played it. Yeah.
I'm not a
I,
Rabbids fan either, but it's very much like it's Mario XCOM. Like it's cartoony XCOM, and the Rabbids it's tasteful. It's actually pretty funny. It's not gross out humor like the Rabbids solo games are. I think you would
I
enjoy
think
it.
they're a lot of fun. The like rabbits like party games
Yeah.
are like a heck of a lot of fun.
Mhm.
I didn't play a ton of them. I just remember there was one where, as far as I could tell, the entire game was just him being inside a Wii remote, and you shook the Wii remote, and he just like, you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know
There's
that one.
it's like literally like they modeled like the inside of a Wii remote as the environment, and there's a rabbit inside it, and you don't control the rabbit. You're holding the Wii remote, and when you
There's a
tilt the Wii
rabbit
remote,
inside the
the
Wii remote.
environment shifts on the screen. The
Oh
rabbit
no.
like
Oh,
falls, and so you can just shake it like this, and he's just like ping ponging all around and like screaming, and that's about
fair.
the most I know about rabbits. Ryder, I know you bought Fire Emblem Three Houses like a while ago. Are you ever gonna play
I
that?
mean, I guess he hasn't played
I
it.
mean, yeah, I'm gonna play it eventually, maybe, assuming I don't die first. But yeah, no, I have not played it yet.
That's like
Okay,
me with The Witcher
just
3, right?
I keep on buying like oh, I want my money's worth, so I buy like 100-hour plus games and then
You're like
never
me with these
finish them.
books.
I did that when you were working at GameStop. You kept getting me with GameStop sales, and I would go and I'd buy like five 40-hour games, and I haven't even played through all of the first batch that I bought, and I did that like three times. So, like,
Hey,
we're
you got in while it was good though. The sales aren't good anymore,
oh, okay.
so it
Um,
was worth it.
yeah,
Shots fired.
it was definitely worth it. Even though most of the games that I bought, I've gotten for free on PS Plus or Epic since I bought them and haven't played them. Um,
It
all
is
right.
what it is.
So since one of John's favorite was also strategy games, Ryder, that brings us back to you.
Okay, so y'all are gonna think that I'm copying y'all, but one of my favorite genres is strategy games, and
We're
this
just gonna
one
keep on going.
yeah,
It's full
I couldn't break
circles.
this one
That's why
into
we're friends,
like
guys.
apparently. But, I mean, there's only like, to be fair, there's only so much you can do as far as you know. These games aren't like created in isolation. They don't say like, okay, I'm just gonna make a game that is strictly this type of game
Hmm.
because there's so
Right.
much overlap,
I have
and
a lot
so
of
like
overlap in my list.
yeah, and like that just makes sense. Your taste is only going to be so specific, and with mine strategy, I couldn't say, oh, it's this type or this type or this type. So I just said strategy, and it's like break into three huge pieces. It's turn based, of course, real time, of course, and one that I don't think either of you have mentioned. John, you kind of enjoy it, the grand strategy. And so turn based, I guess what kind of got me into turn based.
Clearly not Fire Emblem.
No, I can't even say what really got me into it, but I can say that, I guess Civilization. That
Mm.
makes the most sense to me.
Which
Would you consider
civilization?
that grand strategy?
No, that's turn based. We'll get into grand strategy
Oh,
in a
wait, wait,
bit.
wait. Yeah, just ignore me.
Which civilization? The first one?
No. So Revolutions is actually probably the first one that I played.
Which one was
It's
that one?
a spin-off title, and the whole purpose is to have fast-paced games that are like multiplayer. It's actually a lot of fun, and a lot of people didn't really care for it because they were like, you
I
know,
didn't like it
"Oh,
that much.
it doesn't have the depth. And like, so the thing is, if you start playing it expecting like Civ 5,
That was
like
my
that
problem.
level of polish, like no, it's not going to have it. But the thing is, it's made for fast-paced games that you can play with friends, and it's the more like comical side of Civ. It doesn't have nearly the level of depth that Civ 5 or 6 or any of the other games do. But I think Civ Revolutions was the first one that I played, and I thoroughly loved it. And of course, I like from there moved on to Civ 5. I like the XCOM games. There's I'm sure a couple of other games I could think of if I like really drilled into it. But I think that's good enough to kind of sum up
Yeah.
that. Um, RTSs, I got started with Age of Empires 2. Um, my parents got me Age of Empires and Age of Empires 2, the golden editions of both games for like my 10th birthday. And I really, really latched on to 2, probably because the graphics are a little bit better, but also I think the core gameplay is just better overall. It took, of course, I mean, it makes sense. It took all the elements of the first game that were good and it made them better. I think also I just really dig the time period because the first game is set like pretty much Stone Age up through the Iron Age. Um, and so it's early civilization. And then the second game is Age of Kings. So it starts in like the Dark Ages. So Dark Ages. Well, I'm not going to get to the historical significance of that, but
We might
essentially,
be
what
here a
would
while.
the European equivalent of the collapse of Rome up through the High Middle Ages, the Renaissance era, kind of. But I love that. And RTSs that I've since enjoyed. I've enjoyed the Total War games. They're a lot of fun. They're way more complex, though. We actually played one recently, semi recently, for our channel. Oh gosh, John, what was the name of it?
Real time strategy, War for the
Yeah,
Overworld.
Yeah.
War for the Overworld. There we go. And there's like it's something dungeon, but I think the
No, I'm
original series is
Dungeoneer.
based on with something dungeon. Yeah, I know. I know. It was called War for the Dungeoneer, but really like that as well. I really like that genre. There's so much there as far as RTSs, and I've tried StarCraft and it just didn't like hook into me. But I'm sure that I would like if I went back and tried again. And Grand Strategy, I'm not going to beat this dead horse because I've already talked about it tonight. But Grand Strategy is
The Rabbids party
CK2.
games.
So Crusader
Oh,
King, yeah, Crusader Kings, and Hearts of Iron, all of the Paradox games. They really are the grandfather of this genre, and they're the most complex games you'll probably ever play. Not CK2 as much as I think something like Europa Universalis. It's just incredibly complex, the amount of like numbers that go into that game and just all the menus and everything. But I absolutely love that. And it's one of those things when I first started playing, I was like, wow, this is a lot. And now 550 hours into CK2, it's hard for me to not say, yeah, that's probably my favorite game of all time. Not because of any reason other than it's just I know how to play it and it's like a
Strictly
comfort
ours.
game to me. Yeah, I mean, I've just played it so much and it's a lot of fun for me. And I love history, and so it kind of wraps everything into it at the same time. It's also a simulation game, which I'll go into later. It's fun getting to role play. It has like RPG elements as well. Like your dynasty building, and if you want to become, you want to set up your own bishop and nominate him to be pope, and then the pope is like, I don't like that, and you're like, nope, he's my pope now. Now there's two popes. You can do that, and that's kind of fun. Or you want to send your child off to be a member of the Varangian Guard and have him get his hand cut off and come back and like overthrow you. There's so much that can happen in
It's
it,
another
and like as a
Tuesday.
history, yeah, exactly. As a history buff, that just like it's so much fun. Getting to see like alternate history and think like what ifs, like it'd be so crazy if the Mongols didn't stop, once they hit like the European continent, kept going. So it's a lot of fun. Strategy in general is just it's such a big genre. It's one of the biggest genres, just because there's so much that goes into it. But love me some good strategy games.
when you said grand strategy, I knew immediately you were going to talk about Crusader Kings some more. Um, I have
This is
nothing.
ploy. He's going to talk about it 4 times.
I have nothing but respect for those games. And maybe one day when I just like don't have anything going on in my life, I'll sit down and finally learn one of them. But I remember one time, Ryder, I was like, "Hey, I want to get into this," and you're like, "Ooh, let me help." And we were on a Discord call, and you're like, "All right, so go to this menu," and there's like 7 or 8 icons, and I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Click that one," and I clicked that one. He's like, "All right, I'm gonna teach you how this mechanic works," and I said, "Okay, sweet." And then like 45 minutes later, I was like, I don't understand anything that's happening, and we were only doing like one mechanic of being a big game.
It's a
Um,
huge time sink. You
yeah,
have to like devote it, like I'd say at least 20 hours just to learn enough. to be able to move your
Get by,
armies
yeah.
around the map and not be just ridiculously
Murdered.
demolished. But like I said earlier, I'm over 500 hours in, and I'm still have my mind blown. Like, that's how that works. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and I love that for you. It's such a cool like product that people are super into. It's just it's not me right now. Maybe one day. All right, swinging back around to me. I don't think either of you like this genre, so this might be a shorter topic. But
Platformers.
what do you say? Oh, platformers.
Platformers.
My number 3 is abstract puzzle games.
Okay, never mind.
Like I Spy
Yeah, just
for the Game Boy.
oh my gosh. Oh my god, Ryder, did you ever watch our I Spy playthrough that we did on the channel?
No,
It's
I didn't. I'm sorry.
Terrible. You got to check it out. It's terrible.
You missed out. Yeah.
No, so abstract puzzle games. So when I think puzzle games, I think like and maybe there's a better name.
Tetris.
This, yeah, exactly. I think Tetris. I think like Puyo Puyo. I think Bejeweled, Candy Crush, things that are very like set up these colors. You know, set up combos, earn points. You know, kind of like goal oriented puzzle solving. Or like push the blocks around and get the key, or even things like was it Candy Rope or whatever, the iOS mobile game where you're like cutting ropes trying to get the little dude across and get him to the candy.
Oh, you're talking about Cut the Rope.
Yeah, that. Thank you. Like all those I would define as puzzle games, and I
Where's
enjoy.
my water? Sorry.
And you're good. And I like enjoy those, but you know they were never like my favorites. But then this is also a PS Plus game. I downloaded a game called The Witness, and for those of you who don't know, it's like a first-person game, and you start out and you're just in a room, and there's nothing in the room. And you walk up and there's a panel, and you click on the panel and it zooms in, and like a yellow dot appears, and there's all that's on the panel is like a straight line. So you take the yellow dot and you move it up the straight line, and then it's like it plays like a ding, you solved it sound effect, and I'm like, okay. And the door opens and you go through it, and then the line, instead of being straight, it like zigzags, and like, okay, and you follow that, and you're like, okay, these aren't really puzzles, but sure. And then eventually you get to the point where there's one, and it's like a grid that also has like lines going through it this way. And it's not enough just to start on one end and make it to the other, but you have to follow a specific path. But there's nothing on the panel that tells you what that path should be. And you're like, how am I supposed to know? And you have to like explore the environment and like look around. And so there'll be moments where it's like you're walking through like a hedge garden, and you're like, I don't know what's happening. And you like climb up a really tall tower, and then when you get to the top, it's overlooking the hedge garden, and you see like, oh my gosh, that's the exact pattern that panel I was stuck on is. And there's only like one path through, and it's the path that I just walked. So then you either remember, you take a picture like I do, and you go back down to the panel, and you take the line through the path that you walked, and it solves like that. And there's a bunch of stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff like manipulating angles where, like, oh, there's not even a panel here, but like, wait a second, that's like a piece of a panel, and there's one also like 100 yards that way, and it's like, and it's really big, and it's like, well, if I stand right here, and the shadow casts on it, it lines up, and there it is, and it's just a bunch of really cool puzzle solving like that, and it doesn't explain any of it to you at all. It just introduces really simple puzzles, and they gradually get grander and more complex as you're going, and it's just exploring this huge island, and it doesn't tell you where to go. And if you get stuck on a puzzle, you just leave, and there's more puzzles on the other end of the island. And ultimately you need to solve a certain set in each area of the island before you can finish the game. But it's not handholdy. It's not like level based. It's really interesting.
Have you played the Talos Principle?
I was just gonna say that.
I was gonna mention that. That was one that's like on my list of.
It's a good game.
I'm pretty sure it's in that same genre, and I really want to try it. But some that I have played that I think are in the same genre. One's called Maquette, and in Maquette, you start the game and there's like a little diorama of like an environment, and you're like in the sort of awning area, and you walk outside the awning and you realize that you're just in a giant version of that diorama you were looking at. And so you can pick things up in the diorama, like you can pick up a block that's in the diorama and take it outside and you can drop it outside, and then when you walk back to the diorama, it's like itty bitty tiny because it's the size that it is outside. Or you can take something that's outside and drop it in the diorama, and then when you walk back outside, it's giant because the object again is the same size that it is in the diorama, like relative size. You know what I mean? And it's kind of weird to explain. It's really mind bending. It takes like an hour to be like, wait, I understand how this works. But there's like cool parts where you find a key, and you're like, there's no door that I need to unlock. What am I supposed to do with this key? I can't even reach that door over there, and that door's not even locked. And it's like, wait a second. And you take the key over to the little diorama, and you set it down, and it turns into a giant key that's a bridge that lets you get across the gap so you can actually go open that door. So you did need a key to open the door, but it's not like the door was locked. It's just that you physically couldn't reach it. And it manipulates, space that way. And then one, I definitely recommend Maquette. It's like also has like a love story vibe going on where like someone's remembering a relationship they had. But then there's also a game called Manifold Garden, and that game's gorgeous. It was developed by, I think, a French artist. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that. And it's all about like gravity. You like walk up to a wall and you like click R or L or something, and then the wall becomes the floor, and you're walking around like that, and it gets really trippy. It made me really dizzy a few times. I think there's some really interesting ideas there. I don't think it's as polished as The Witness or Maquette, but I do think it's still a really good game if you're into that genre. And I definitely want to check out the Talos Principle. I've been itching to play kind of a puzzle-y game lately, so maybe... Is that on Switch yet? Do y'all know?
I don't know, but I checked. It's
Definitely
like
on
$4 right now on PC. So
I
on Steam.
might buy
And then
that later.
another game that just came out recently you may like is the Stanley Parable. I was watching some gameplay of somebody doing that, and it seems like it would fit in this category in a puzzle-like. So
that's
might
definitely
be
an
up
abstract
your
game.
alley.
I've seen that played, but I know there's new content in the Ultra Deluxe, so I might be interested in checking that out. I kind of want to put that in front of Megan and just see what she does with it, because it's a very like, for those of you who don't know it, like it's just there's a narrator. It's like, this is Stanley. This is what Stanley does, and then it's up to you to choose whether you do what the narrator says you're supposed to do or not, and then it kind of rolls on from there. But anyway, that's enough of me waxing poetic. If you guys haven't played The Witness, anyone hasn't played The Witness, just try it. If you don't like it, you don't like the type of game, that's fine. But try it. I think you'll appreciate something about it, even if you don't like fall in love with it the way I did.
I was trying to find another game where you were talking that was very similar to that, but I can't come up with the name right now, which is unfortunate. But I felt like you would really like it too. It sounds very similar to the game you were just describing.
If you think of it, let me know.
I definitely will.
This is like, I mean, it's obviously a more popular game, so I'm sure you've played it at some point. I think you've told me that you played it before, but I mean, would you consider the Portal games to be a part of this like genre, or is that too like straightforward for you?
No, I think I would consider that abstract puzzle for sure. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't even think about Portal. I love those games. I watched my roommate play through the first one and really enjoyed it, and then I picked up the second one and played through that, and with a buddy of mine played through all the co-op missions. Yeah, I'm planning on getting those whenever they come to Switch and playing through those. Those are also just delightfully witty and clever with all their mechanics. Yeah, definitely. Portal and The Witness. Check those out. All right. Enough of that. John, what's your number 2?
So this is the one y'all are going to have to help me define, because I feel like this is a category of games, but I don't know what you would call it. Yeah, so y'all are going to have to help me define this.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you what you do in these games and what the games are, and y'all got to help me define what this is. So the main thing would be you are collecting different monsters or something. So, for example, Pokemon. Hold on, that's just one,
Pokemon.
But that's not a genre though. Creature collection, and then you can combine the creatures together or even breed them to make unique ones.
Monster Rancher.
Like that. So exactly, Monster Rancher's on that list, and Ark Survival Evolved, where you can breed all the dinos and make unique versions or very cool ones. Other ones would also be Slime Rancher. And then, because you're going around collecting all the different slimes and setting up a farm for them. And then finally, the one I had wrote down is Dragon Quest Monsters. Joker, which is actually the only Dragon Quest game that I've played, and it happened to be a weird spin-off game apparently, because apparently the Dragon Quest games are very similar to Final Fantasy games in some regards. Like,
I'm
in my mind, anyway.
I'm pretty sure that Dragon Quest either 5 or 8. I haven't played any of them, but I'm pretty sure either 5 or 8, excuse me, is like a creature collection game.
Yep, that's what this is, where you have a team of 3 monsters, and it's the same monsters you would fight in the other Dragon Quest games, but you collect them, and you can train them, and you build up a team of 3 of them, and you're going around collecting the rare ones and stuff like that.
So what was the first? So I think that you could pretty like wrap a bow on that by just calling it like a creature collector.
Yeah, so I put collecting/breeding games, but whenever I said the word breeding games, it sounded very weird. That's why I had to specify I was talking about Pokemon and
Yeah,
That's its own genre on
and
Steam.
Monster Rancher. Yeah, that's why I had to make sure I said all these games before I said something like
I
that.
like
So,
games where you breed.
yes. See, because that sounds weird, but whenever I'm like, yeah, Pokemon, where you can make cool ones, unique ones, and shiny ones and stuff,
It's okay when you're
sounds a
making
lot
other
better.
animals breed for you.
John,
Anyway.
I'm gonna move this forward by asking: was Pokemon the first game that got you into this?
Yes, it was. So,
Which one?
my first Pokemon game was Pokemon Leaf Green,
Okay.
and then I got Fire Red, and then I got Crystal and Gold and Silver, and then I just went from there.
But where
And
did you
then,
become obsessive with your catching? Because I know that when I was a kid, I used to try to catch everything that I could,
yeah,
and
it
I
was
would
the
breed a
first one.
lot. But
It was the
okay,
first one.
it started that early.
Yeah, yeah.
It started
And
Okay.
that
then,
early.
I mean,
because
it's a
I really
problem.
like
It is.
collecting them.
When did this
It
happen
was
to you,
very,
John?
it was very fun to collect them. And then,
Have you
the next
told
game.
people on this channel that you've created a living dex? Like,
Yeah,
That's what the
yeah,
last
we covered
episode was
that
okay,
in
about.
another video. Yeah, I finished it.
okay,
And
I couldn't remember if that was something you discussed. So,
fair. And then the game I played after that was Monster Rancher. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 on the Game Boy and Advance, and I really liked that. And then I upgraded and I played Dragon Quest Monsters Joker, and then that elevated to Ark Survival Evolved, where I've put many an hour in that, over 1,000 at this point, and then Slime Rancher as well. But these were the games I felt like really fit into that category of collecting and raising unique creatures and animals and stuff like that. That
Mhm.
just I didn't know what sort of genre that is, but I know that's a genre that I really enjoy doing.
I really like Pokemon, but I've
Hmm.
never really gotten into a creature collection game outside of Pokemon. Ooblets looks interesting. I saw that in like the Switch presentation, but
Hmm.
we talked about it then on our reaction stream that I'm just not
Right.
like into the farming element of it, and it looks like farming's gonna be a big part of that, so I'm probably gonna pass on that one as well.
I'm keeping
Um,
an eye on that game, but I'm iffy on it right now.
yeah, I don't know.
you,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say you might want to try the Yokai Watch games. I know
Oh
that
yeah,
like
that's a good
Never
idea.
heard
it's
of those.
way
I'm gonna write that
newer,
down.
but they
Got it.
I think the like the more recent releases for the 3DS had more yokais, little monster dudes than Pokemon did over the course of like a much shorter span of time, and they all had like individual animations and like little character twerks and like everything. So I've heard that not from like a just comparative standpoint, like, oh, I hate Pokemon and I need something to be better, so I'm going to go out of my way to make something like one for one. But I've heard it's just all over. Like the Yokai Watch games are just better games, period,
Hmm.
because they have to be.
Mhm.
They don't have name recognition. Most people, if you just say Yokai Watch, like what? So,
Yeah, I've never heard of that till y'all mentioned it. So
Yeah,
mm,
I've heard
let's
that
take a
they're
look.
very good. One thing to keep in mind though is I'm pretty sure that like the last few have only released in Japan, which kind of stinks if you get into it. But I've heard that they're very good. There's a lot of on the 3DS. I think is
yeah.
probably your primary console if you're going to get into
I
those.
think I've heard the most recent one on the 3DS is the best one that it's released in the United States at least.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Thanks, guys.
Mhm.
So did we give a name to this genre that I just list? Collecting games.
It's
Creature
creature
collecting,
collection.
or
Yeah.
I've heard like monster catching, monster collecting, but I think the best term is just Pokemon
Obsessively,
games.
Yeah,
compulsively collecting all of them.
Pokemon,
Pokemon-like.
and I can't believe it's not Pokemon.
Yeah.
Basically.
Real quick, Monster Rancher story. I'm pretty sure I was playing Monster Rancher at my cousin's house one time, and you battle monsters in those games, right? Okay,
Yep.
I was battling this
Do
guy.
tournaments.
And do you make your own monsters too? There was some game I was playing where you like had like a magic brush or something, and you would draw your own monsters, and then they would like render them in 3D. It was weird.
I haven't played that one.
Maybe this is like a fever dream from when I was like 5, but I was fighting this guy, and his monster was a turnip, like not something fancy. Like it was just a cartoon turnip. It didn't even have eyes. It was just a white root, green leaves, and I was like,
Blue flower, red thorns.
I was like, this is amazing. And so I went into the character creator and I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I just drew a stupid turnip and I was like, this is my monster now. And that just made me think of that, unlocked that memory for me.
I am the rancher now.
All right, Ryder. What's your number? Are we on number 2 for you now?
Number 2.
3. We're at 3.
Oh, I thought we were going like from 4 to 1.
Oh yeah. I thought you meant like this is the third one we've done.
Yeah,
so,
this is the third one that you've done. Yeah.
Okay. Glad we cleared that up.
Guess simulation games is there for me. You know, here we go again. Crusader
right?
Kings. No. I'm trying to think what really got me into this, and it's really hard to like pin down something particular because
Goat Simulator, right?
Yeah, that's what it was. So I think SimCity 3000 was the first that I officially played. I played it on actually the original PlayStation back in like 2000 or so, maybe 2001, but I didn't play it a lot. I remember thinking it was cool. I love the music in it. I love the colors and everything like that, but I didn't play it a whole lot. But Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, I think, is the first game that I really put time into, and I absolutely loved the kind of freedom that I had to build my park there, and watching it grow and making money, and building roller coasters with rails that were way too short, and then setting the max speed to like 102 miles per hour, and then killing 40 people on it. It was a lot of fun, and being able to pick up your little people and have them dangle around. I guess what I'm saying is I've just always wanted to be God in simulation games. Give me that option.
Always wanted to torture the populace.
Did you ever play Black and White?
Pokemon Black and White?
No, there's a game.
That's what I thought you were talking about
Yeah.
too.
There's a game called Black and White where it's like a simulation game where you literally just play as God, and you're just like a hand floating in the sky. Or maybe I'm thinking of God Hand. Maybe I'm like conflating things, but one of those two is a game where it's a simulation game where you're just like starting civilization, like starting life, and you're helping your little pathetic humans like develop technology and sending natural disasters when they sacrifice the wrong animal to you and things like that.
I don't know that, but I'm gonna go find it.
I think it was
kind of
PS2 game, and I don't know that it's ever come to anything else.
Okay, I'm gonna look into that because I thoroughly enjoy this genre, and it bled over into other things where, of course, I like all the SimCity games. I like Crusader Kings. I like regular Sims. Sims 2 on the Nintendo DS was one of my favorites.
On the Nintendo Wii.
I don't know if I've ever played that one.
It is very different. You would not like it.
But it's a fun genre. It's a good way to kind of turn your brain off, and it's fun because a lot of times there's like a slow trajectory. You don't turn it on, just get tons of stuff done, but you kind of watch that your pieces kind of build, and it's satisfying getting to a point where your world is self-sustaining, whether that be Roller Coaster Tycoon, SimCity, or the actual Sims games where you hit that point where you're just making enough money that you can just kind of come in and check periodically, and eventually hitting the point where you just stop playing altogether, or just say, all right, time to send an earthquake or just tear my park apart because it's funny to do.
Where's that Godzilla cheat code?
Yeah, really. Or the UFO used to be one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really have much else to say about it. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's such a fun like genre for me, and I love turning on those games still to this day. I mean, I bought the Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 like re-release that came out like 2016 has extra maps in it and stuff. It's still a lot of fun to this day. Um, I think the biggest thing with a lot of those games is they've just stood the test of time. Like some games are just made well, and I think that the like Roller Coaster Tycoon games, like mechanically, they're very straightforward and they don't need to be anything special. They're just a lot of fun, and yeah, they hold up to the test of time.
Roller Coaster Tycoon's one of those that I don't know that I've ever played for more than like 10 seconds. Maybe one day I should just like, as a 20-something-year-old in 2022, just like jump into it and see what I think about it.
Why not?
It's really good, and it goes on sale all the time. And I mean, it really is one of those things where like it has infinite play value. If you, in my opinion, if you play it for 10 hours, you've gotten your money's worth. Or you can be one of those freaks that puts 3,000 hours into it because you can just go as complex as you want to go. You can just do the preset roller coasters, or you can design your own roller coaster that has all the loops and like turns and stuff. And it's really really cool getting to see like what your brain can do within like the confounds of like itty bitty areas.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, just
No,
quick
go for it.
aside. It's related, but another game that's in this genre I just thought of is Thrillville. It was actually it's crazy. It was a LucasArts game, but it was like in tandem with the teams that actually made the Roller Coaster Tycoon games. But it's a 3D game, and so you could make your own character and run them around your theme park and play mini games and stuff. And you could get on the roller coasters that you build and ride on them. So it mixed like the best of both worlds for me because it was like The Sims, and that I had like my own little like rider that I could play as, but also I could like build my theme park however I wanted, and that was really really cool.
Sweet. All right, Ryder, you guessed it, just one round too early. My second favorite genre is platformer,
Hmm.
and specifically, I'm going to say the 3D platformer is my second favorite genre. This all started way back on the GameCube because, well, I'll back up even further. My first console, as a man born in 1997, was the Nintendo Entertainment Center. Oh, Entertainment System. I blew it. So like 10 years after it came out, that was my first thing. I mean, I guess it was like 15 years because by the time I was old enough to play it. But anyway, we had Mario 1, we had Mario 3, and we had other stuff that I didn't care about because we had Mario 1 and Mario 3. And I played those and I really enjoyed those as platformers. Mario 3 was and is my jam. It's better than Mario World. Fight me. Um, but then we got a GameCube around the time that came out, and my parents bought us two games for it.
Oh, can I guess them? Can I guess
Yeah,
them?
go for it.
Luigi's Mansion and oh gosh, Super Mario Sunshine.
So it was Super Mario Sunshine and Frogger Beyond.
I would have never
And
guessed that.
and if you've never heard of Frogger Beyond, you don't worry about it. It's not the important part of this conversation. Super Mario Sunshine, warts and all, is just such a delightful experience, and it
One of
was
my top games.
yeah, and it was my first 3D platformer. And there's a lot of contention about whether it's actually good or whether it's a good Mario game or whatever. As a kid, it was delightful, and just seeing the Mario platforming that I'd grown to love now in 3D was awesome. And so now, I grew up playing Mario Galaxy, Galaxy 2, 3D World, which also is, not that great. Odyssey, which is amazing. And then more recently exploring like other games in the 3D platforming genre, because for a while it was just Mario, but since then I've done Banjo Kazooie. I played that this year. That game's amazing. Played a little Donkey Kong 64. It's a little bit rough. Ukulele, Banjo Kazooie, spiritual successor is pretty good. Played a lot of 3D Sonic. None of those were good, but the genre's just so fun, and there's a Hat in Time that I really want to check out. And I love not only just the skill, like the reflexes it takes to like I gotta do this kind of jump and then jump off this wall to get up to this platform, but it's more honestly about just the exploration. And it's like, all right, I see that ledge. There's a stack of coins on that ledge. That means I can definitely reach it. but there's no obvious way to do it. So how do I get over there? And it's just about exploring, uncovering the secrets, figuring out how to manipulate the environment to get higher and farther. And there typically are like really cool power ups also that help you traverse the levels in like unique ways. So yeah, 3D
This is
platformers are
why
great.
Wario World is your favorite platformer of all
Yeah,
time,
that's
right?
exactly right. I forgot about Wario World. No, Wario would fall into the 2D platformer category, which I do love 2D platformers. I think Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is one of the best games ever made. Yoshi's Island is amazing. Mario 3, like we mentioned, Wario Land 4, all super good. John, you mentioned a similar love for Sunshine. Did you want to go into that at all?
Yeah, that was one of the probably the most I played a GameCube game. That was number one. I think I've played through that game at least twice now. And then you said Yoshi's Island. So now the main menu theme is stuck in my head.
Yeah, all the Yoshi music's so good, so you could do worse.
Yeah, yeah, facts.
Um, Ryder, are you? I know that you play like Mario, but are you? And we play Donkey Kong together. But would you say that you're a platformer fan?
Yeah, they play Donkey Kong together. That was fun.
Uh, yeah, I like platformers. I don't know. So I really like them, but I have like a weird relationship with them where like if you ask me to list my favorites, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna list that as like one of my favorite genres. But
Yeah.
if you ask me to list some of my favorite games of all time, I'm going to give you platformers. So I'm going to be like, oh yeah, you know, Super Mario World, Super Mario Bros. 3, Yoshi's Island, Toomba. Um, I'm going to list off 2D and 3D platformers, but it's not something that immediately comes to mind. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that I grew up playing a lot of those.
Mm.
Because I don't go out of my way to look for platformers now. I've played Celeste, and I really like that.
Oh, so good.
But I don't really look for them anymore. If they pop up and it's a really good sell, or someone's just beat me over the head about, oh, you need to play this, you need to play this, I'll play it. But I think the only two recently that I can think of that I've played other than Wario World, which is there's a video on that. Just
I'll
scroll to the last 10 minutes if you want
I'll,
to hear me
I'll
talk about
plug
it.
it right here.
But the last two that I can think I've played was Celeste, which is an amazing game. Uh, Crazy difficult 2D platformer, but extremely rewarding. Great story, music, everything like that. And then the other one would probably be Super Mario Odyssey, which is I think like the pinnacle of 3D platformers at the moment. I don't think anything's topped it. Um, and those are both amazing games, and some of my at least Mario Odyssey is one of my favorite games ever at this point. But like I said, I don't go out of my way to look for them, and it is a weird thing because I grew up playing those games, and I think that those are some of the best games ever made. Donkey Kong Country, of course, you already mentioned those, but like 1, 2, and 3 are absolutely amazing games, and 3 is probably in my top 15 or so of all time. So I don't know. I know that was like a non-answer, but I don't really know what to tell you
No,
other
you're
than
good.
I like platformers, but for some reason I don't remember that I like them until I have a conversation like this.
Yeah, no.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, everybody go play Mario Sunshine and Tropical Freeze. Those are the best platformers. Even though Ryder just said Odyssey. Odyssey's good too.
I think it's the
John.
best 3D platformer ever made.
Yeah, fair enough. John, what's your number one?
all right. Well, I was making this list, and I didn't realize that my favorite genre was a more of an emerging genre.
John, hold on.
Um,
I need to stop you. Every time we've gone around, I've been like strategy, and Ryder's been like simulation, and you're like, hold on, let me set this up.
I don't know
Let
what
me.
type of
I
game
don't.
this is.
so hold on,
This isn't
you're
a
gonna know.
genre per se.
This is
the
a genre.
vibe I get.
So this is a genre, but
Okay.
I didn't realize like how new of a genre it was. There's so many games in this genre now. But whenever I was
Souls like.
listing, no, no, no. But whenever I was listing the games that went in this genre, I didn't realize like the oldest game I could think of, I started playing while I was in high school.
Okay.
And I didn't realize like for me how new the genre was. Like because I didn't play any of the games when I was a kid, and I was trying to think of any that maybe would have went into this. But the genre is survival, crafting, and building. I and I say all those three things together because usually all three go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize, I was trying to think of any games that might have been older that I would have played that had these three elements in them. Can you guys name any just off the top of your head?
The oldest one that I can think of is probably Minecraft.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe Project Zomboid, or Minecraft, but I couldn't think of
Minecraft's
any.
older
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
couldn't remember how old Project Zomboid was. I just know it's an older one.
I would take an educated guess and say that there are probably a random assortment of older games that have
Hmm.
some of these mechanics, but I don't
Hmm.
think that the genre came into being until like Minecraft in like 2009,
Right.
2010.
Yeah,
It
and
definitely
mhm.
popularized the formula.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like solidified it.
and I love that because I had so many I have so many games on this list that really define that genre for me, and that's why I love this genre so much. And looking at my list, like the other categories don't really compare to the amount of hours I put into games that fall in this category, and that's why it ultimately would be number one. The only one I can't definitively say I've maybe played more or less of is Pokemon because it's hard to put all those together because of how many different games it has been over the years.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one that could come close to this category, though, but that's because it's hard to compute that one. But so for the games that I wrote down, one of the very first games that had all of these elements in it that I started playing in high school was Ark Survival Evolved. And going into that before, all the running around the map, collecting, building bases, crafting all your items, and just collecting all those dinos and just building bases. And it just progressively got really more and more fun for me. And then further getting into the series, some people probably don't even like this mechanic, but I actually really loved it in Fallout 4. I got more into the crafting and the survival and stuff. I didn't even finish the story because I was too busy managing my settlements and building them and making them the way I wanted. I actually
I think
modded the
that's a very
game.
popular opinion,
Yeah.
actually.
Oh, is
I think
it?
a
Okay.
lot of people, like, if you ask everyone, like, what do you like about Fallout 4? That was, like, probably the only thing that was consistent across the board for even for people who were like, Fallout 4 is the worst Fallout game. It absolutely demolished, like, everything as far as, like, the politics, like, the
Hmm.
world building, like, the narrative, everything that Fallout had been. They'd still be like,
But they
base building was really
base
cool.
building. It
So.
was. It was fantastic. And I actually took it a step forward and I fully modded Fallout 4 so I could get rid of the stuff about base building that annoyed me. Like all the trash that would be laying around and you couldn't get rid of it, even though people are living there, they would clean it up. That was one of my biggest concerns with it. And I found a mod that got rid of that, let me get rid of that. And I was like, yes. And then I got to really fully customize the buildings the way I wanted and everything. And then moving forward into this genre, I got more and more different games, and one of them would be Life is Feudal Forest Village. So you're just setting up a village of people to prosper on an island, and you can build castles, set up farms, and it's very fun and detailed.
How I was gonna ask how in depth is that now? I'm not trying to derail this, but I've been putting off getting it for a while because when I initially looked at it maybe a year ago,
Hmm.
I kind of heard like it wasn't nearly in depth enough to justify the purchase. Like once you hit
I
like the end of the loop, that was it. Like it just was the same thing over and over again.
that is I didn't end up building any castles in it because whenever I got to where I had a very expansive village, I just got to the point where like, well, I feel like I've done everything and none of my people are going to starve at this point because I can
Hmm.
choose how many citizens I want to add on. And then if I never go over like a huge number at once, then I'll never have a problem keeping up the food production and stuff. So it did get tedious near the end there, but I would say there's a lot of emerging games coming into this. Foundation would be one that's still in, it's playable now, but they're still adding on more and more to it. This kind of game right here, they've they haven't added really anything notable to it, and to my knowledge, that would make it more immersive and more worth going back to. Um, but something like Foundation, which is newer and still putting out content, and I believe another one is Medieval Dynasty, where this is more of an emerging game, so there's more going into it. And Aftermath Survival is like a post-apocalyptic version of that. I hope I said that right. And so there's a lot of emerging games that are seem like they have a foundation in what was set up by this game as well as Banished. So there's a lot that are different ones going into this. I wouldn't recommend this one as opposed to some of those newer ones because they still have active development going on. And then some other ones would be Satisfactory. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that one. So
I've heard
less
of it.
survival in that one. But yeah, you're building a factory and optimizing your builds and making production lines to what is the word? Take over this
Be
planet
more,
with your
yeah,
manufacturing. Yeah, but
capitalize it.
yes, there you go. That's the word. And then another one would be Genesis Alpha 1, which you are building a spaceship and colonizing other planets with your crew and just managing your entire ship and making sure to keep your crew alive and scavenging supplies so you can set up a new Earth. And then surprisingly, Minecraft is on my list too, which I actually did not start playing until 2019,
Wow.
which is crazy.
I
Yeah.
remember asking him when we were in college together, like, "Do you like Minecraft?" He's like, "Nah, it's kind of dumb to me." And I was like, "You're gonna eat that. I don't know when, but sometime in the future, you're gonna realize how good it is."
Always made that joke, and you've probably both heard me say it before. I was waiting for them to update the graphics.
Yeah, probably.
Whenever you said you didn't play till high school, I assumed it was this game that you were talking, like Minecraft was the game you're talking about, because that was my introduction to the genre.
After
because
college.
I played it during my digital media class sophomore year.
No, you didn't. You did actual work in that class.
And then upgrading to a modded Minecraft server that I set up and had a lot of fun with like over 300 mods on it. It was fantastic. Had a lot of fun. And I'm actually back playing on PS4 right now. So no mods, or PS5, but no mods, but still having fun with it. Just relaxing, having some fun. And then two more to throw in at the end, so I'm not taking over the whole thing. The Forest, and then Green Hell as well. So fantastic
I figured
games.
the Forest was going to come up, which kind of transitions. I have two questions for you. One was, so you said survival, crafting, and building. Okay, would you say that you enjoy the survival aspect of the games as much as the crafting and the building? Like the need to collect your resources in order to survive?
Absolutely not. My favorite part is the building, and so building, survival, then crafting, because sometimes the crafting can get tedious, but
sure.
You have to do all the crafting to do the building. So I was just talking the other day, I wish I had a counter of how many trees I've cut down in video games, because that number would be astronomically high. But building is my number one thing. I love designing the different things and really managing of the settlements or the places and just the overall management. And then the survival is really fun too.
I gotcha.
Hopefully you do not hear the cats in the background. I apologize if you do.
No, you're fine. So based on that answer, I think I know what you're going to say, but the survival genre, does your like for the things in it, including the building and crafting, does that still hold true when you're playing like a survival horror game? Like a game that's survival based, but there's the crafting and the building aren't there. So like Resident Evil is an example of like survival horror.
Yeah, I really do enjoy survival horror games. So The Forest is survival horror crafting. I didn't really even do that much building in The Forest because after I figured out that it wasn't even a necessary part of the game, we did more of the survival and the going through the different cave systems and the story-based stuff. We did less building. We actually didn't even go to our home base we set up that often after we figured out it wasn't really a main component for finishing the game. So I would say, really depending on the game, but the survival, depending on if that's why I've originally gotten introduced to the game, then yeah, that would probably be what I would be more geared toward. Like The Forest, I was more intent on playing it for the survival aspect and the doing the story than the crafting.
Okay, cool. Ryder, number one.
I cheated.
You cheated?
Because my genre is one that, for as long as I can remember, the first time I heard this I remember thinking that's not real, because it's really not, but I'm just going to throw it out there and y'all can make fun of me or talk about it however you want. But Sandbox is my number one. Is it technically a real genre. Yeah, I guess so. But also, it's really, really kind of hard to quantify like
Do you
what
mean
that
like
means
Minecraft
exactly.
creative mode?
Yes. I also mean Minecraft survival mode. I also
Oh, okay.
mean
Okay.
Metal Gear Solid 5. I also mean Mountain Blade Warband. I also mean Skyrim. It's like it is a sandbox game
Interesting.
I mean, you can do whatever
because
you want.
exactly
Oh, okay.
because
Like Elden
the
Ring.
whole idea of a sandbox game is it sets you off and says, "Yeah, do what you want." And so I think it is kind of cheating for me to say that, but I think that the only reason why I can consider it okay is because the freedom is what I like, and that's what kind of constitutes a sandbox game is the ability to kind of approach tasks however you want, just leaving you to do what you want.
How are you differentiating your definition of like a sandbox game versus just an open world game?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, do you consider Elden Ring a sandbox?
Mm,
We're asking the
I
tough
don't know.
questions.
I really don't know, and
Yeah,
that's I can say definitively like I think Skyrim counts as an
absolutely.
open world game and a sandbox game. And I think
That's
sandbox
how I
because
treated it.
you don't have to do anything in that game at all that's related to any sort of story. You can literally leave the first, area, Helgen, and be a blacksmith for the rest of your days. And that's completely valid. You can go into it like the stealth archer route, and I guess you could say like, oh, well, that's just like the RPG side. But the thing is, you can just focus entirely on cooking and not do anything else. And
I
so
did an Alchemist playthrough, so yeah, I understand.
Would you consider the like the 3D Mario's like 64 and Odyssey? Would you consider those sandbox games?
no,
No, because you like
no,
jump into the level and then you can explore the level however you like. Well, not so much with like Sunshine, but with like Odyssey and 64, you do choose a mission for 64, but pretty much all the stars are always available to you depending on what order you want to go in, and especially that's true of Odyssey, where they just drop you into the kingdoms and you just do whatever you want in the kingdom until you're ready to leave.
yeah. I mean, I guess so. The thing is, there's not really much to do otherwise if you're not like if you're playing. I guess the what kind of the bar that I do have is that the point to Mario is like, yeah, you can just kind of jump around and stuff, but you're still kind of like the end goal of Mario is to eventually beat Bowser.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's not enough really for you to do to just run around and explore because you're still going to be gaining moons, which is ultimately going to push you to the next area. I know it's like such like a maybe thin line that I'm putting there, but I guess like the whole thing is like I don't know. I really I can't tell you. That's why I think it's like it is kind of cheating for me to say it because it really is just like an all encompassing term, and so many people kind of qualify it in a different way. Where
Mm-hmm.
you ask someone like, "Oh, is the Forest a sandbox game?" and someone will be like, "Yeah, it's a sandbox game because." You can spend all your time just cutting down trees and shooting birds out of the air and just eating those raw. And other people are like, no, well that's why it's a survival game is because you have to like maintain your food bar and there's like these building elements to it. But um, I don't know. That's like my favorite genre, and I think the entire thing comes down to freedom. And if you, as the player, can say there's enough freedom in this game for me to call this a sandbox game, I think that's completely fair. But I don't think that the Mario games have enough freedom in them um, for me to call them like a true sandbox. And I think maybe it's maybe the variety of freedom
Mm-hmm.
because Mario ultimately like I get what you're getting at. Like you're just kind of left to explore, but the core mechanics are always kind of the same. Like you can't really change the way you play Mario because you're still just going to be like jumping. That's like the whole thing is like it is a platformer at its core.
Yeah,
Um,
I think this is really interesting. Have you ever played Hitman? Any of those?
you cut out. I think you said Hitman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I played one back on like the 360 way back when, but no, I guess you're like referring to like the newer Hitman
yeah.
games where
I think
it kind of just drops you off and it's like, yeah, kill them and decide how you want to do it.
yeah. I think that's kind of how I define sandbox games. I would differentiate between open world. Like I would consider Skyrim open world, and then in my mind, a sandbox game is a smaller location where there's perhaps a more defined task, but they just drop you in, and there's a variety of ways for you to play around in that sandbox to accomplish that task. And I think Hitman is I would say Mario Odyssey is a great example of that, but I would also say Hitman might be more what you're speaking to.
Animal Crossing.
I I
I wouldn't
I'm
consider
not
that to be a
following that
sandbox,
logic.
actually.
A sandbox?
That's like a life sim.
Yeah, I consider it more of a simulator than a sandbox.
Grand Theft Auto?
I don't know. That's
That's
a
a
sandbox.
sandbox.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, see, and that's what I was going to say is growing up, the first time I heard the term sandbox was literally sandbox / open world. And until the age of like probably 18 or so, I didn't really see those differentiated very much. I think that's kind of why there's maybe not much of a rhyme or reason to the term. Is it's just kind of like it was an umbrella where a time where open world games weren't what they are now, but open world games have evolved so much in the last 10 years. I mean, I guess really since Skyrim, they've just gotten bigger and bigger and more complex that like now you can't just say one is the same as the other. Like they are different things. But there is still overlap there. Like maybe, I don't know, every square is a rectangle, not every rectangle is a square type of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, I see what you're saying. It's really interesting. My number one is going to be far less interesting because it is both popular and broad. My number one genre is action adventure. I'll be honest, I'm surprised that I'm the only one that's like throwing that up on this recording.
Only reason why I didn't, because I thought about doing that, but the only reason why I didn't is because I'm already doing a sandbox. I'm already doing like a very like general like genre that I couldn't specify more. At least with RPG, I could be like, oh well, usually Western narrative driven, but like I couldn't have 3 things that were kind of generic.
No, I see what you're saying. Action adventure, it kind of is a catch-all, but also it's because a lot of games just copy the action adventure genre. Like, just games that come out this year that I would put in this category: Elden Ring, Horizon Forbidden West, Ghostwire Tokyo, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Pokemon Legends Arceus, kinda like a little bit less with that, just because the combat's not very actiony, but like the stealth and the catching the Pokemon and the traversing the environment, like, and that's just like this year. It really just not necessarily third person, but typically I think of action adventure as a third person, grander sized game where you're exploring, participating in combat, unlocking secrets, and gaining abilities and items.
God of War.
Yeah, God of War is an action adventure for sure. The game that got me into it first was certainly The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, which I'm sure one day we'll do like our favorite games ever. So this is kind of a spoiler for that, but like my favorite game ever is The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and maybe that'll change one day, but it hasn't yet. That game is so good. The combat's really simple. It's just press B to attack and then parry. It's kind of like the Arkham system, that whenever Arkham Asylum came out, it's like, yeah, you punch until you get like a little tingle above your head, and when you get the tingle, you press a different button and then you counter. It was that, except like 6 or 9 years earlier, somewhere in there. And so really simple, but like enough complexity to it. Exploring the environments was super interesting. There was a bunch of islands that you hopped to and from in your boat, so there was also the adventure of, sailing, different dungeons to explore, a ton of bosses. It's just a fantastic game. Just so I'm not repeating myself and describing more Zelda games, because they're all similar. I would say like,
Breath of the Wild is a sandbox. I would consider that to be a sandbox. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess you could play it like that for sure. It's an action adventure open world sandbox game with some very minor RPG elements. Anyway, another action adventure game that's like a very different take to Wind Waker, I would say, is Dark Souls. And not everything has to be about Dark Souls, but
But it does.
the Souls franchise is in my top like favorite franchises, and it's another action adventure game. Definitely leans heavier on RPG than some other games. I'm also a huge fan of Spider-Man 2018, Marvel's Spider-Man, I guess technically, if I'm going to get the branding correct. That game's great. Just these 3D games with this giant spectacle where you're exploring environments. I would say most games fall into this category. Most popular games fall into this category, and I think that's for good reason.
Absolutely.
I don't have much to say about that.
Yeah, it's not an
Because-
interesting choice.
it
just is.
all of these, you know, I said it earlier, but like all these genres are interconnected. There's not like one on its own, and so I mean, I hear you talking about those, and a lot of those kind of fit into, or some of those fit into my whole narrative-driven Western RPGs. You know, that there's a lot of overlap, and it's hard to talk about one without kind of like talking about the other. Like my Crusader Kings literally fits into like
Basically all
almost all
four,
of mine.
yeah.
I mean, like
That's why it's one of your all-time
RPG in a
favorite
more
games,
generic
though.
sense. Exactly, yeah. But I mean, video games they're just kind of grown and grown and grown, and now like we live in. I tell Larkin all the time that we're very lucky to live in this like golden age of art, where like people say, there's no good music today. Like, okay, you're not listening then, because there's so much music, because people have the ability to make music in their homes in a way that they've never had before. Like if you have a MacBook, you have GarageBand, you can do everything that you need to do on your own, or you and your friends can use Spotify to leverage yourself to become famous in a way you never had before. SoundCloud. I mean, yeah, I joke about SoundCloud rappers, not like on this channel, but it's funny to joke about. But that's like a real way to kind of get out there and have people find you. Books, the same thing. There's just tons of books, like thousands and thousands released every year in the U.S. alone. Movies, same thing. Like tons of underground indie movies, all the way up to huge blockbusters. And video games, like no exception. We're living in this time period where video games are more accepted than like ever before. Yeah, streaming. But I think me and Kurt maybe talked about it a while back. I'm not sure if this video is published or not, but there's a time period in which I remember growing up for being made fun of for playing video games, being told like that was like a weird thing, or like only like fat nerds did that. And like, okay, yeah, it's kind of true, but also at this point everyone plays video games. I remember being told like video games are for boys, and that's not true anymore. Yes, the demographics still skew male, advertising skews male, but like it's awesome seeing these genres that used to. Mario was like platformer, and then Mario was like, let's do a RPG, and then Mario's like, all right, let's do a 3D like platformer, and like Mario is not just one genre anymore, and I guess I'm using that one example to kind of go into everything, but
I mean,
I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point.
Like God of War originally was, strictly action kind of hack and slash, and now it's like a deep, like I think most people who think of God of War now think of like a deep narrative
driven game.
Yeah,
that's why I played it.
Yeah, so like you're completely right about not only like the demographics and like who and what, or who video games are for and what they are has evolved, but just the genres have intermingled to the point where everything has like a little bit of something else. It's not just like there are almost no strictly platformer games. There's platformer games that also weirdly have RPG elements or have Souls like elements. Like that's a thing, and it's super cool seeing how these evolve and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't, and then what catches on until eventually it's like, oh no, that's just part of this genre. And it's like, well, it didn't used to be. It is now, but it didn't used to be, and that's super cool to see. Well, guys, we made it through an entire discussion of video game genres without mentioning Metroidvanias, so congratulations to us.
Because they suck.
I like Metroidvanias. I think it's a bad name though. We should refer to them as search action, which isn't really better, but at least it
That's
doesn't.
much worse.
At least it doesn't require you to know about 2 other games before you can conceptualize what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
I do think that like most people. Sorry, this is like a whole other discussion. I think most people that do know, if they enjoy that genre, they know what that genre is called. You know, you don't just find casual people playing Metroidvania games, because I feel like, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, that was way more common, but that genre just does not exist outside of niche circles now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's, at this point, the term is set for a reason. You know, the people who seek out those games want something like Metroid or like Castlevania.
Fair enough.
But
yeah,
this is also. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I was just kind of making a passing joke, but you've given me my platform, and I'm gonna tell everyone to go play Hollow Knight. But please, Ryder, continue what you were saying.
This is just I wanted to hit this before we officially end this. You mentioned earlier like Frogger,
Beyond,
and was it Beyond?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a worse Frogger game, I think.
Okay.
And I want y'all to at least like Google it real quick and look at it. And if anyone's watching this, you can at least look it up. You should probably go play it too. It's called Frogger: The Great Quest, and it is honestly kind of terrifying. I remember like my dad buying this from someone because they were like selling all their PlayStation games for like $20 or something like that. My dad was like, "Yeah, why not?" and bought this along with like 50 other games.
This looks awful.
And I am very thankful for my dad getting us all these PS2 games. But this is one of those that I played, and as a kid, I remember like I was probably like 12, and I remember being like kind of terrified playing it just because of Frogger looks so scary in this.
It looks
like I don't know why
terrible.
they decided to make him like this like gross looking anthropomorphic like man-child thing.
It's like Frogger
I don't
Toad
know.
on drugs.
It's really kind of scary. His outfit doesn't do him any favors, like the cargo shorts and like vest.
If you guys want to play a good Frogger game, then you need to play Frogger 2: Swampy's Revenge.
Frogger 2 is good. Oh, I don't know about that one.
Road.
It's legitimately good. It's just a subtitle. I'm pretty sure it's just Frogger 2.
Yeah, it's the same game. Yeah. Frogger 2 is really good.
Legitimately a good game, and there's multiplayer. That's the first game that taught me what WASD was. I was like, why would you ever do that? Why wouldn't you just use the arrow keys? And here I am now, sitting in front of a PC like a schmuck. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Once again, this is Press A to Talk. If you've enjoyed this content, please give us a comment. Let us know what your favorite genres are, what you think qualifies as a sandbox game.
Everything.
Whether Frogger, the Great Quest or whatever it's called, it counts as a sandbox game. Also, likes are helpful, subscribes are helpful, sharing with